Who do you think would make the better teacher? An expert who's never taught before, or someone who's just learned to do that thing? 9 times out of 10, it's the person who has actually just learned how to do that thing that makes a better teacher. And the reason is because experts suffer from something called the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is when you understand something so deeply that you have forgotten some of the most basic building blocks of your knowledge that you learnt years ago, because those are now unconscious to you. And so every time you attempt to explain your ideas to other people, you start your explanation too deep and people have no idea what you're saying. And to give an example of how this works, if you go onto any road, well, don't go onto a road, but if you go onto any pavement and watch people driving, you will see very quickly who the learner drivers are, because they do things a lot more slowly. And the more experienced drivers are the people impatiently waiting behind them, honking their horns. Now, the reason learner drivers do things so slowly is because they have more steps they need to go through. For an experienced driver to turn, it's one step. You turn. To a beginner driver, it's like 10 steps. First, you have to look out the mirror, then you have to signal, then you have to position yourself, then you have to slow your speed down, then you have to look out the mirror again, then you have to turn. Each of those is an individual step that they need to master. But for an experienced person, they condense all of those steps into just one step. So as we get good at things, in order to get efficient, we condense multiple steps, multiple building blocks of knowledge into one simple step. That gives us efficiency, but the downside is we lose awareness of how we actually do things. And that's why experts are not great teachers. And a great solution to this problem is just regain awareness. Spend a bit more time with beginners to notice how they actually do things and the steps they follow, and notice the things that you'd forgotten. Because the more awareness you have of how you actually do things, what are the building blocks of your knowledge? What are the actual steps that you follow? The more awareness you have of those things, the more easily you will find it to explain your ideas to others. So if you want to break the curse of knowledge and be a great teacher, be great at explaining your expertise to other people, simply regain awareness of how you actually do things, and you'll be able to explain it in a language that they understand.